earlier this week, a federal judge ruled that Martin Shkreli conviction stands and his sentence is not going to be reduced for all the fraud that he committed. This Pharma Bro. As I look at the facts of this case, they're saying, Peter, of course, you've handled many cases
right.
involving Ponzi schemes that you've had to handle in civil court. I have no love lost for this guy. He's awful. He's the worst of the worst. I mean, just to put it in perspective, this is the guy that raised the AIDS drug Duraprim by 5,000%. Now, this was a life-saving, necessary drug. He knew what he was doing. I mean, it was 5,000%. As a matter of fact, there were many people that went months and months without taking the drug, and they had relapses. So I can't imagine the suffering and death that this guy's caused. But I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this case, and I'm trying to see what is the fraud that he committed.
Well, he actually, and the status of this case is they're trying to decide what his restitution is, how much he owes back to the government, and how much time he's going to serve. But what's kind of novel about it was that he pilfered money from one company and put it in another, both under his control. So his defense lawyer's argument, and there's a quote here, that that they actually didn't lose money because the company that he took money from and paid it to the other, the profits were high. Now that's not a novel argument. And so what they're saying is, now we've made you 20%. Now you've only taken 15 points out of that 20 and transferred it to another company. So you still made 5, right? So no one's hurt. You still made money.
You're still making 5%.
But if that was the rule, you could steal with impunity up to the profit level, down to 0, and say, well, I mean, you don't have any losses.
Just arbitrarily make a decision. In other words,
the judge didn't buy it.
You arbitrarily make a decision on how much one shareholder is going to make compared to what the other one makes.
Right.
Not on the power of how the product is doing, but on your subjective opinion about this shareholder should make this and this share. Yeah. And that's really, well, I thought it was interesting. They're going after his Wu-Tang Chan leather-bound album that he has, and he's also got Lil Wayne.
That should be worth the whole restitution, right? The unreleased.
He has an unreleased album by Lil Wayne that they're going after, and he has a copy of the Wu-Tang Clan's their leather-bound album, Once Upon a Time in Shaolin.
Yeah, that was to help pay his $10 million bill.
Yeah.
$7.3 million in cash and assets, and includes a Picasso painting. But they're saying, you know what? We really shouldn't have to pay anything because we only stole your profits.
Well, I mean,
as long as we only steal your profits,
this
it's
guy
all
is
right.
the worst of the bottom feeders. I mean, you talk about a real bottom feeder. He is one. He can face 20 years in prison, if he's convicted by a jury. But I think most interesting about this, when I read it, I thought about Valeant.
Right.
Now, Valeant is a pharmaceutical company that nobody went to prison because this really big Wall Street insider, William Ackerman, was involved in the Valeant case. But let me tell you, the Valeant case was no different than this. Here's what the company would do. Valeant would go in and buy a small company or a big company. They would buy the company according to what the need was of the pharmaceutical. In other words, there's these niche, there's diseases where you don't have tens of thousands of people that have the disease. You only may have a couple thousand people. So they would find companies like that. They would buy the company. In a pill that used to sell for $50, they would raise it to as much as $4,000.
Right.
So that's what Valeant did. Now, because of the people involved in Valeant, because this is a Wall Street insider, Bill Ackerman, nobody's gone to prison. They jacked up prices on these absolute life support kind of medications. If you don't have this stuff, you die. So Valeant went in and did the same thing that Pharma Bro did. Pharma Bro jacked his up 5,000%. There's cases with Valeant as high as 10,000%. And not one of them went to prison. But why? Okay, first of all, Pharma Bro is low-hanging fruit.
But these are the kind of people they prosecute.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
they
always-
claim
it's
a
always
big victory.
low-hanging
I
fruit.
mean, it is. I mean, it's the layups. It's my 15-year-old could prosecute this guy. You took money from one pot, you put it in another. But the more difficult cases, they, you know,
It's not, is it even a matter of difficulty?
No, you're
In
right.
other
Right
words,
when I said that,
the,
you're right.
the facts are the same
You're right.
in so many ways.
No, you're totally right.
But one is a political insider. We covered a story
about big company versus small.
Yeah.
This is a little tiny.
Yeah.
This is a small bit player. It's not one of the big. It's not one of the
Right.
big Wall Street
We-
firms.
we covered a case maybe a couple of weeks ago where you had a mortgage company that was doing the same thing that they were doing up in Wall Street every day. The mortgage company would make up just fantasy facts about what the financial standing was of the person borrowing money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, so in one with a small company, the guy that really didn't have all the Wall Street influence, they threw him in prison. With Goldman Sachs and with Shearson Lehman, with all those folks, nobody's been to jail. Right. Jamie Dimon. What about Jamie Dimon hasn't been to prison?
I mean, at the end of the day, none of these guys have, and they just don't go after the bigger fish. And it all has to do a lot with that revolving door. Nobody wants to irritate the Goldman Sachs because they're going to get a job there next week.
Talk about revolving door.